Hey y'all, welcome back to Mom. I am your host, Ellen Wong. Today, it's my honor to introduce the guest, Steve Rio, who is the co-creator of the Enfold Institute, among many, many other things that you can read in the bio in the show notes. I had the honor of meeting Steve earlier this year when I went to Bowen Island near Vancouver for my very first experience with 5-MeO-DMT at the Enfold Institute, which he co-created with his wife, Austin. To say that this was a life-changing experience is the understatement of the century. I feel like my experience with 5-MeO-DMT, otherwise known as the God molecule, really completely changed the way I am in relationship with my body. It changed my perspective on death, on energy, on our essence as energetic beings. And it's really opened up my imagination to ideas of what may happen after we die, after we leave this physical form, our bodies here on earth. And I think there's really nothing I could have done to actually, ready myself or prepare for the experience that I had, except to just willingly be there and allow for the medicine to show me what it was meant to show me. It was a very somatic experience, but I also got a lot of really interesting visuals from this experience too. And this conversation was actually recorded in June, so only a couple of months after I had this experience. So I was very deep in my integration, which I still am, even, like almost 7 months later. I'm recording this now in November. And just reflecting on this year and how that experience really shaped this year or shifted what I experienced this year. The one massive shift could really be summed up in one single word, which is allowance. I really learned how to embody allowance. And I think sometimes that can be described as surrender. We use the word surrender a lot, especially in the spiritual space, surrender to the universe, surrender to this, surrender to that experience. But I'm really starting to love the word allow, because I feel like there's agency in that. There's a moving towards the thing that scares us, or moving towards the unknown in the word allow. And I think the experience itself, the very visceral, physical experience of being with 5-MeO-DMT was an experience of allowance, because more than any other medicine I've ever worked with, and it's not like I'm this, very, very well-traveled psychonaut, but I find that this particular medicine, you have no choice but to allow. And the more you resist and fight it, the more, I think, anguishing or uncomfortable the experience is. And so you do confront a lot of shadow. You confront a lot of fear. You confront a lot of the energy held in your body that may not even be able to be named, really. But I came out of this medicine experience, and really I want to extend the medicine experience to incorporate the entire retreat experience at Enfold. Everything about this, from the way that we were given very nourishing home-cooked meals to the music that Steve played while we were doing breath work or while we were deep in our medicine journeys, the sauna ceremony, the cold plunge, afterwards, all of this in combination allowed me to have this truly transformative experience where I came out of it not necessarily feeling quote unquote better. I want to be very clear about that. I think it shattered a lot of misconceptions I had about my relationship with my body and what it means to be a human in this life. I think it shattered a lot of misconceptions about death. I think misconceptions I didn't even realize I had. And I think it also opened me up to this experience of non-duality that was quite, almost, I would say, curiously unnerving for me. I think some people would describe it as a feeling of blissful neutrality. And I use the word neutrality a lot when I was describing it, but there's also an afterwash of uncertainty about life beyond this body. And my preference in this moment as a human being in not being able to feel cathartic releases of my heart, whether it's elation or deep grief. So I'm really excited to offer this conversation to you as a gift, and as just a deep, intimate look at my own integration process, which again is still very much ongoing and will be ongoing for the rest of my life. But the way the conversation unfolded was very much me sitting with Steve and him holding space for my integration and processing of this experience. So I invite you to find a quiet space, to find some stillness, to feel the weight of your body where you are seated, wherever that is. And if you're in a space where you can gently close your eyes, I invite you to do so. And just take this deep breath with me here. Deep breath in through the nose. And a full exhale out with gratitude to the earth. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce Steve Rio. You write on the website, this is from Enfold, the Enfold website, talking about 5-MeO-DMT. You say that it's unique from any other psychedelics in that at high doses, the experience dissolves the mind entirely and allows you to let go of trauma and patterns on a deep somatic level. This can feel like a true death and a rebirth experience. At full strength, you leave your body, time, and space. Where you go is impossible to describe, though people give it many names. The infinite oneness, God space, the quantum field, pure consciousness, etc. And I was reading an article where they mentioned psychiatrist Stanislav Grof,
Yeah.
as saying that he compares 5-MeO-DMT to that stage between reincarnations that
Mm.
Buddhists call the bardo. And so I kind of want to just jump off from that point, what you describe about this medicine and really kind of start to unpack what is 5 and what has been your experience as somebody who walks with a medicine, who receives the medicine regularly, and also as somebody who facilitates the medicine?
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
big question.
It's interesting because one of the things when people come to see us, or as they're preparing to come to see us, we do our best to prepare people, but there's also no way to describe exactly what the experience is going to be for that person, and 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 so for some people it is the experience. They feel like a visceral experience of dying or their body dissolving, or it can be very frightening, it can be very blissful. Some people have almost no experience of it at all. they just feel a shift in the body. And in many ways, I think of the what happens over the few days to me is offering a microcosm, very intense look at how you move through life and therefore will move through death, like how you hold how you hold yourself, and how how you interact with the universe, how you interact with the flow of what is about to happen next, that and what is happening in this moment. And so for a lot of people, the experience can be um, this experience of clutching and holding so tightly and feeling the tension of their ego and the mind trying to just restrict the experience, repress the experience. And at a certain point, the medicine gets strong enough that there's just no chance, like there's just no chance of holding on. Um, but it's really interesting when people have that experience, that really like they feel that tension. They often feel like there's something that the experience isn't working, or that they're not doing it right. And I always say like that noticing that tension, noticing the way you're holding, that is the medicine, that is the lesson.
Mm.
And to explain, because I really think that almost everything, everywhere we hold fear, is in some way related to fear of death. It's the ego's fear of death, of ego's fear of annihilation. And sometimes annihilation to the ego can just mean losing an argument with your husband or wife, right?
Totally. Uh-huh.
Like so the ego is always trying to like protect itself and win and stay alive and avoid annihilation. And so when people get really upfront and close and with the discomfort of that tension, that's a beautiful lesson in itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the experience of um, a lot of people seek out five because a lot of what people say on YouTube about it is that it's this beautiful, blissful white light experience.
Hmm.
And for some it is, but for a lot of people it's not. For a lot of people it's actually just all the ways you hold, which restricts you from feeling that absolute interconnectedness, that absolute presence in the moment.
And when you say hold, it sounds like what you're really talking about is like attachment, right? Like things that you're attached to, outcomes that you're attached to, a certain aspect of a relationship that you're attached to, a version of yourself that you have to be seen as, things like that.
That can totally be it. Yeah, people, and the integration of five is so challenging for people because often they've gotten this glimpse of what it means to be alive beyond them, beyond their name, beyond their personality and all of those things.
Mm,
And then they're back in their personality suit, and the ego is really fighting to get back into that identity and to hang on to that identity, because again it's trying to avoid annihilation.
mm, mm,
But they've had this glimpse of, oh, like what it feels like to be unrestricted in that, with all of that, to let all of that go. And that can be a really challenging uh, wrestling match. Essentially, it's like we think of it as like dissonance between the left and the right brain, between the body, which you suddenly feel connected to in the present moment and the absolute presence, and the mind that is constantly trying to identify and attach itself to ideas, outcomes, beliefs, all of that kind of stuff.
yeah. I there's a what you're reminding me of is the very first dose. I just have to say too, the way that you and Austin prepare us, I kind of said this a little bit in the beginning, but you take such a thoughtful approach. So I knew exactly what was going to like physically happen at
Mm-hmm.
every moment, which was very relieving. It definitely does a lot to kind of calm the nervous system. Like, okay, this doesn't feel quite as scary because I have no idea what I'm stepping into. Like I know the experience itself is completely, not nothing I could possibly imagine, but at least
Yeah.
I know, okay, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths, and on the next inhale, I'm going to have the pipe in my mouth. I'm going to inhale. The
Yeah.
logistical aspects really helped to just bring me into that space in a really calm sort of way. And so that very first dose, the handshake dose, which was the most minimal dose that you administered that day, I do remember at blast off because it was a brand new experience, right? So I felt my brain trying really hard to make sense of what was happening, like
Mm-hmm.
what the hell is going on. And it almost felt like Um, it's so funny because the metaphor that comes to mind is actually the uh, Marvel Comics intro. Like whenever you see a Marvel movie, like it's like the flip book kind of thing that goes faster and faster and faster
Oh,
and
right.
faster. So it's like my brain fighting against this voice, which I can only imagine was like my spirit, my higher self, you know, my essence saying, just allow. And then my brain going, wait, no, 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 but what is going on? And then this voice going, but just allow. And so it was like a tension and then a letting go, and then a tension and then letting go.
Mhm.
And it kept on happening faster and faster and faster and faster at such an accelerated speed to the point where finally the blast off point was
Mhm.
allowance, you
Mhm.
know, and just full what I now attribute to being full body surrender, and a
Yes.
surrender I've never experienced before in my life.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it's like this very accelerated, very intense version of what we do all the time in our life, which is believe we're in control, believe we can, dictate the outcome of everything, believe that we have to understand everything that's going on all the time, and like that we somehow are puppet stringing the universe when in fact we're like a canoe going down a river with no paddles. Our mind is constantly in this fight for perceived control, which is an illusion anyway. And this acute experience with five is, as the medicine gets stronger, it's dissolving that belief, and you see the mind, like you said, that what's going on. Or sometimes the mind is saying, how are we going to explain this to our friends? Like, it's wild that in the intensity of it you go, how am I going to describe this? The mind is already trying to figure out how it's going to tell the story of
Yes.
this experience, which is so interesting, right? Because as humans, I mean, story can be a very important aspect of how we relate to our world and all of that. So there's something interesting there, and there's a lot of hangups that can happen in story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this experience is just a very acute version of basically our hands being torn from the handlebars, or they're really perceived handlebars, I would say, actually.
There has been, I want to say one study, if not more, comparing like near death experiences
Hmm.
with the 5-MeO DMT
Hmm.
experience, which I'm kind of like, I've been reading about. And it's interesting to me because there are so many similarities to that.
Hmm.
Um, the the feeling of, again, just like letting go, and what you're saying, taking your hands off the handlebars, and which I can imagine is essentially what's happening at the end of life, where you are literally letting go, you know, letting go of this physical form, and the density, I guess, of the physical form. And I think even that aspect is something that I experienced with the medicine, where it may have been, I mean, I definitely experienced it on like my first journey up during that handshake dose, but the second journey up, even, there was, because I now understood, or I now had the felt experience of what this medicine is going to feel like and what I may see and things like that. The letting go was almost instantaneous. It was sort of like, okay, we're like back here again, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But there was almost kind of a release of this body, in a sense.
Hmm.
Like that's kind of what I experienced. I'm curious
Yeah.
if that is
Yeah. Well, I
could
mean, I've experienced that many times, and I think, your background and your contemplation of death is a really, really helpful orientation, because when the mind is being dissolved by this medicine, that is the perception of death, and the dissolving of your body. And I think a lot of people come to this experience with zero context for that. And
mm-hmm.
it's been interesting for us, because I think we do a very careful job of providing a lot of information, like you say, like really walking everybody through, this is all the detail we can possibly give you about this. But then there's a line where you got to let everybody have their experience, and there's got to be, and if I try to define it and I say this is going to be just like dying, and just relax and just let the body go, I mean, we tell people to relax and just breathe, but we can't bring our own perception or dogma to it, because everyone's going to have their own experience. So it's an interesting balance there. My own personal experience, I've experienced I mean, my very, very first experience was an absolute disillusion into a pure white light. So I did have the classic experience, and no one had told me anything about 5-MeO when I first did it, which looking back was kind of wild that I did it in that regard. But those are the wild old days, the good old days. Um, actually, they were kind of the weird old days, but that experience happened, and I dissolved into pure white light. And as I was returning back, I just remember seeing is the wrong word, but just knowing the entire universe as a single moment, as a single moment of perfection, and how every single thing fit together. And uh, just beginning to laugh deeply about the fact that I had ever worried about anything in my life, because it was so ridiculous. And
Yeah.
there was a deep grieving in that. But I've also had experiences of dissolving and experiencing my conception into material life, so I believe that, like, we are part of life, and then my body got formed at some point, and my consciousness came into that this body, and I've experienced my conception, seed and the egg, kind of coming together, and that
Wow.
also being the conception of the universe, like seeing the Big Bang, essentially seeing how
Wow.
everything is basically a fractal beginning and end all at the same time. And my life beginning is the entire universe beginning, and it's all the same thing. So I've had that experience. um, i've I've never personally had like a frightening experience of dying, or being, some people experience like a physical shredding of their body. They describe it as like a shredding or a tearing apart of their physical form. That's never happened to me personally. But I've also had lots of experiences that are less about dying and more about just experiencing my interconnectedness to all of my genealogy and my ancestors, and my, like, to be able to, again, there's no visuals with 5 typically. Some people have visuals, or like brief visuals, but having the experience of seeing seeing's the, I don't have a better word than seeing, but seeing my mom's life, like, essentially, like it was my own memory, having the feeling of what it was like for her through her late teens and 20s. And then the same with my father, and like feeling that in my body, in the cellular memory of my body, and being able to work with that and release some of that energy, or interact with that energy and understand it better. So
Wow.
it seems to connect you into very different layers of what it means to experience life.
I'm curious if you set different intentions that had brought those types of experiences through, or if it was just, and I can only speak to my relationship with the mushroom, which is a little bit more in depth than I'm just starting this
Yeah,
relationship with 5, but
yeah.
where every journey, it's very much a relationship, like a friendship, or,
Hmm.
a stewardship kind of relationship, where they just show you a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more each time you sit with them.
Yeah. I So with 5-MeO, I think that only the most meta level intentions are useful. To go in and say, today I'm going to work on the relationship I have with my dad, is very rarely going to work, especially at higher doses. At lower doses, when you learn to stay, like, and the more you learn to stabilize this experience, like I would say, with my meditation background, even from the beginning, both Austin and I have such a deep meditation background and experience with psychedelics, that we're very comfortable in these altered state spaces. And not the first couple times, but we started to learn to really be able to stabilize at lower doses and mid-range doses. And then also it's almost being able to hold a focus as you're coming back from the highest of doses. And I've only ever really held very meta level intentions. And the main intention for all of my psychedelic work for 5 or 6 years was, what does love feel like? Because I felt like I didn't have the receptors to feel love. I could enact love, and I could see love was being provided to me or offered to me, but I couldn't feel it in my system. And so for many years, like, that became my intention. But actually, I would say five handed me that intention over a year or two of working with it. That's when I realized, oh, that is the core essence of what this work is about for me. And of course, there's also just the meta level intention of, can I just relax about
Yeah.
everything? And relax sounds really simple, but can I just relax?
Mm-hmm.
Can I relax and trust the universe? Can I trust in emergence is one of my core intentions. With, I read it as part of my values that I read every day. And trust in emergence is emerged out of this medicine too, meaning I am not in control. I am
Mm-hmm.
merely a witness, and I am I am in flow with what is happening. And I am my only the only thing I need to do is to listen to the moment, and look for what the moment is asking for, and respond to that. That's it. I don't need to dictate anything else. So
Mm-hmm.
that these meta level intentions have, but they've more been like these massive master lessons from this medicine that have then formed intention. More recently, I would say that I have had more of a theme of exploring my relationship with my father. Um, and I've been able to hold that as a core frame in some of my journeys recently, but it's never like asking a specific question and getting a specific answer. Five is usually like, oh, you're wondering about this? Well, here's 5 layers deeper than you asked for.
Right.
And now you need to unpack what that means. And I often get messages from 5-MeO that are from this medicine that are, they're so pure because they are coming from a complete non-dual perspective of, we are all interconnected. And like, for instance, 5-MeO has told me many times, you should be doing all of this for free. Why are you
Mm-hmm.
charging money for that? And for a while, that really, really challenged me, because I said, man, am I way out of integrity? What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is that I understand the message. The message is, be in service and make sure this is always about service.
Yeah.
And I don't need to explain to 5-MeO that I have a mortgage, but
Right.
but like, you sometimes often have to take these meta level messages and then interpret them for the responsibilities that you hold in your life, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
and continually orient yourself to the medicine without, sometimes the medicine is such a meta level message that it's not actually useful if you took it
Verbatim.
verbatim. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
make sense, right? It would,
Yeah.
or I mean, I could give up everything and live as I could wander the streets. I could do that. I mean, that is possible,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think I could survive with this level of integrity and do that at the same time.
Totally. Because
So
you there needs to be a level of safety and survival and comfort for you as a body living on this earth to be able to facilitate and actually hold these spaces as well. But I
yeah,
get what you're saying, because it's actually really interesting that that this is coming up, because in my experience with other medicines, predominantly mushroom, there are these universal themes that come through that my integration becomes like, how do I apply this to a very
yes,
human and physical and
hmm,
material life that has certain needs and like I want to say demands almost, to be able to survive in a way that feels safe and comfortable for me. But yeah,
yeah,
it requires that interpretation.
yeah. It's like, it's all a balance. Somebody's got to do the dishes sooner or later.
Right. Right, exactly. I also love that that the way the medicine has been working with you is that it's sort of, you're kind of giving me this a new look at death in a sense,
hmm
which is almost a return to the purest expression of love
yes,
that I haven't really, I think, held, or even considered,
yes,
because oftentimes I think we think of death as there's like a natural sense of like, okay, there's a loss that's happening with death, but really it's, to me it sounds like um, the truest meaning of it is just a return to what has always been, or a return back to the completely non-dual, unattached
Mm.
form that is our essence,
Yeah.
which is
The
beautiful.
yeah, the loss is only experienced by the living.
Yeah.
There's no loss. Life is life. Our life, the life that you and I are both part of, it does not end. There is no ending, but there's certainly a loss. There's a loss in the change in the nature of the relationship you have with someone when they have a physical body
Hmm.
to when they don't, for
Hmm.
sure.
I I think that there's also something really interesting with this medicine really helping us to work through, or at least release the attachment to certain situations in our life.
Mhm.
I feel like, and this conversation may turn into a little bit of integration for me too,
That's
but
great.
I feel like what I'm actually moving through right now, I saw a spiritual coach just recently post about this phenomenon that he's named as spiritual depression, and
Mm.
um, and he's naming it as something that happens whenever we're going through sort of like a big change in, I want to say just even like energetic freak, like what we're holding, and I think what I'm moving through, it's been a little over 2 months since my 5-MeO journey with you guys. And the integration that I've been experiencing has been very interesting to me, because I think whenever I go through some of these big transformational portals, there obviously is going to be a little bit of downtime. There's like sort of like a, okay, I need to retreat a little bit and just be with what happened and what I experienced and what that means to me, and then come out in a different way, or start to come out of my little hidey hole and emerge in and kind of show up in a different way than I ever have been before. Not maybe drastically different, but different enough to me, making different decisions, or, showing up with different offerings, or showing up differently in my offerings, things like that. And what I'm noticing right now is that there is, the big themes that came out of my journey with you guys, with the medicine, is what you kind of talked about. Um, I've been using the word allow a lot, and find myself saying that a lot in every conversation I have, conversations with myself that I'm having, like, just allow it to be, just allow it to happen. And having kind of a hard time, like, I think it's that
Yeah.
brain part of me that's just like, that's bullshit. No, you gotta like do your thing, get back in there, start to plan out your fall. Like, what are you doing? You need to like onboard clients right now. What's going, and like a mild sort of panic that's happening in some region of myself. And then
Yeah.
this other wiser part, post five, saying, no, 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 it's gonna be fine. Just allow it. And so it's almost kind of like what I experienced in that handshake dose, a little bit less. It's like a flip flopping constantly. I feel like I'm battling myself a lot.
Yeah, I totally get that. And that's really common. And you're at the 2 month mark, which means the 2 to 4 month mark is often that phase of, um, it's like the trough of disillusionment cycle. There's like the peak of excitement and motivation and clarity. And then, oh, wait, what does this all mean? And how do you activate this in a long term way? Because what you're speaking to is well, there's a few things in there that are fun to poke at. One is that I, so I also have a private coaching practice as part of what we do here, and I work with very high performing people, and typically I'm working with them at mid stage in their lives where they've made a ton of money and they've been very hard doers their whole life, and that's been successful on certain fronts, and it's either made them sick or they've lost, or if they're lucky, they've reached a point of realizing this shit's not going to keep working if I
Mm-hmm.
keep doing it this way on their own, or
Mm-hmm.
they've had wake up calls. I say, like, you're always lucky when you have an awakening before your wake up call, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's always a nice thing. But that can be challenging in itself. But it's a big part of that transition for people is, okay, I've been actually, if I look at myself, I've really been driven by fear my whole
Mm-hmm.
life. And even if it's not like this really intense fear, it's this low level, subtle fear, this survival mechanism that is built into, I mean, we are a survival machine. That's all. Like, we simplify life down, all life is doing is here to make more life and
Yeah.
stay alive, keep the gene pool going, and um, all of those kind of things. But we're driven by survival. We're often informed by scarcity of our ancestors because,
Mm-hmm.
we're more and more abundant and our consciousness is expanding. But our core programming is, there's famines in our ancestry, and there's escaping war, and there is immigration, and there is death, and there is all sorts of,
Yeah.
hardships that are hard coded into us to survive and to be fearful of, and to take this scarcity, we are alone in the universe mindset. But the transition from I am alone in the universe and I have to fight for everything that I get mindset, to I am abundant, and if I just trust the universe and get into flow with it,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a big gap there, and it doesn't happen instantly. And there's lots of traps inside of that, where you can um, have the illusion that you are now trusting the universe, when actually you're not. You're still fear based.
Mm-hmm.
So that often the natural abundance doesn't come, because deep down you don't believe in yourself, or you don't believe it's possible, or you still have fear based belief systems that are driving the energy that you are creating around you. Yet you've sort of brainwashed yourself into thinking, oh, I'm living in abundance, and I every morning I look in the mirror and I tell myself the universe loves me. But I don't know. But you have to, there's a lot of work that goes into actually healing the parts of you that don't believe you're safe, and finding safety, and learning to emit, the transmission and energy of safety and abundance. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's, that's a big like that's a multi-year process.
Yeah.
And that's like a multi-generational unwinding. um and so I totally get that. Like, I mean, I've been going through that for 5 years. um
Mm-hmm.
and uh every once in a while it gets like, I really fall back into some scarcity, and I have to call one of my light being friends that just remind me, look at all the things that are happening.
Thank
Or,
goodness for those friends. Yeah.
right, they're tapped in, and it's so interesting. Yeah, so I totally, like, there's lots of dynamics in there that are complex, and that take time. And we're really talking about switching from the fear of the mind, which is always going to say, trust me, trust me, trust me, I can keep you safe, I can keep you safe. And then learning to listen to the heart, which says you are safe,
Yeah.
you are
That
safe right now.
that I think there's something really powerful about this medicine in helping to, if you've never experienced that before, that sense of like you are safe, like everything's okay, like you're okay, everything's happening exactly as it needs to, then there's something about this experience that really helps you to have that, you know, however long the journey, that moment of pure just you are okay. And
Yeah.
I do remember coming back after that again. It was that first handshake. It was like the most minor, like smallest amount, but laughing at how much fear had driven my life
Mm-hmm.
and realizing like, oh my God, it's almost like an elephant being afraid of like a grain of sand. The
Yes.
magnitude of that, of
Yeah.
like who you are, your essence, being so fearful of
Yes.
this teeny tiny like
Mm-hmm.
non issue, non thing,
Mm-hmm.
or nonsense. um it was like almost absurd, and so laughable.
Yeah, like that's when my very first experience, laughing this deep, belly laugh. And Austin said it, she'd never heard me laugh like that. And it was a grieving laugh. It was
Mm.
grieving at the fear, a grieving that I had worried that I'd put so much pressure on myself my whole life because I thought I had to do that. And seeing like, oh, actually, everything is exactly like, it dawned on me in that moment, the whole universe is working in this perfect motion from, think about how complex nature is and how it just works, and then span that out to the cosmos. And then we think, oh man, I screwed it up today.
Yeah,
Like it's they don't fit together.
totally. Totally.
But it is like I see this a lot, like in that people get this glimpse of, oh, like they some depending on their level of, I would say, like spiritual training before the experience, they might be able to define it, or it might just be a feeling of just divine okayness. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and feeling that feeling. And what we often see is people, this huge smile on their face, and like it's just absolute pure bliss. And then you just, if they just wait, if you just wait and they're able to sit in that, very commonly the next thing to come is tears, because like that's when
Mm.
the grieving begins. That's when it dawns on them, oh my god, I can't believe I've been so hard on my partner. I can't believe
Mm.
I have been, so resentful of my mother. I can't believe that I've been so hard on myself. I can't, you start seeing all the ways that you have blocked yourself from this knowing, which is inherent in you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to wrestle with that. You have to come to terms with that in a very short time. And I actually always hope that people will touch on that grief,
Yeah.
because that's the real honesty of what's happening in that first time you get that big of awakening, and that big of a remembering. We call it a remembering. This is a
Mm.
remembering of who we truly are, and the inherent nature of love that is life. And that was basically programmed out of us, perhaps in the womb,
Mm-hmm.
by a
Mm-hmm.
fearful mother who was shooting stress hormones into our system,
Oh,
right?
totally. Yes.
All the way through all the things that, challenging birth, all sorts of, you might have fallen on your head, you might have like all sorts of
Yeah.
very boring things can happen that can cause trauma. And of course there's all sorts of things that happen in the family dynamics, and
Mm.
uh, all of that. And slowly we get programmed to believe we have to become somebody to earn love,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and that we need to be in control to stay safe. And
Yeah.
those two core beliefs, that this is the slow work of unwinding that, and as much as possible and as often as possible, to stay remembering that this moment is exactly as it was always going to be,
Mm-hmm.
and that we are safe in this moment, and that we can trust our heart and trust love.
Mm. I remember literally just the tears coming and the realization of what a privilege this life is and what a privilege of being in
Yeah.
this body is. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that in itself also comes from the letting go of the fear of death in that moment, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like so much of what I realized, that experience of like feeling that sense of just gratitude, overwhelming gratitude for this body, I think came because I have spent so much of my life protecting, surviving,
Mm-hmm.
creating all the armor and all the, the mechanisms, the perfectionism, the people pleasing, both of which I feel like I'm on this, like I've been healing from that for a while, but really hardcore starting to heal from that after this journey.
Yeah.
That shit is coming out loud and clear and just like, Ellen, this is your work right now, like
Ah.
so presently, and realizing, oh my God, people pleasing and perfectionism, it's like peanut butter and jelly. It like goes together and it's
Oh
actually the
yeah.
same thing. And so, yeah, just the ways in which I was so hard on myself and
Yes.
so hard and unloving towards my body. And so, in this moment of like that dip, that sort of like, call it a spiritual depression or a transitionary sort of liminal space I'm in right now.
Mhm.
I've been taking all of that energy that has been so used to, okay, what is this offering? What does it look like? How am I going to roll it out? What does the promotion looks like? Like all the businessy things
Mhm.
that I fill my mind and time with has been now focused on a qigong practice and incorporating breath work back into my life. I mean, it was so silly for me to even admit this out loud. I'm a breath work, facilitator, and I hadn't done breath work in over a year myself,
Mhm.
up until
Mhm.
the point at which I was preparing for this journey.
Mhm.
It's crazy. And just starting to realize, oh my gosh, all of these tools, all the things I've been learning over the past 6 months, or sorry, 6 years, have been really directed outward
Mhm.
and not really turned back towards myself. I haven't
Mhm.
been living it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah. And what you're describing too is this pendulum of being so attached to the like, even if it's unconscious, this, oh, I got to get the marketing nailed and everything's got to be perfect, and I got to, and if I don't get, if I'm aiming for 10 clients and I don't get 10, then that's a complete failure, and all these, all this stuff. And the pivot, often the first pivot is, oh, I just got to stop doing all of it because it's all out of integrity with love, the love that I felt in that moment. So I don't, and then you have to work yourself back, I think, to, like, I
Mm-hmm.
see this for a lot of my coaching clients too, is there's this weird lull where you almost have to stop
Mm.
until you can step back into the arena and do all of those things again without any attachment. So
Yeah.
I'm going to work on the marketing campaign again, and I'm going to see if about, I think 10 clients would be lovely. And I'm going to do all the things I did before, but I'm not going to do them with the panic, and I'm not going to do them with the fear, and I'm not going to do them with the pressure. I'm not going to sit there and be the, disapproving mother to myself, or the disapproving father to myself, or whatever the dynamic was that drives that behavior. I'm going to release all of that so that I can actually put 100% of my energy into the beautiful creative output of making things. Because I've Austin and I were talking about this a couple of days ago. Life, part of what life is creation. There's
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
constant creation in life and in love, and that's a natural, like, that is a natural state of being in love and and alive, is to be in creation. But as soon as we attach an outcome to it, some percentage of our energy is being sucked out of the moment. And we're so, but anyway, I see, we see this for a lot of people. You go through this lull where you just stop and you go,
Mm-hmm.
I can't touch anything right now. I just got to figure I got to get back to basics,
Yeah.
and then I can step back into that arena. But it's a interesting challenge. I have one client, she was exceptionally successful and built this really beautiful business that she sold and did super well. And but by the time she sold it, she was really unwell, like physically unwell. The stress, I mean, the amount of pressure and the amount of things she persevered through is just unreal, which obviously made her a very financially successful person, but she was physically unwell. And it's been a couple of years of rebuilding. And she even started a project right before she met me, and then we started working together, and within a month she just realized, oh, I'm doing this project again for the wrong reasons, and I had tricked myself into believing but she realized, oh, the energy of this
Yeah.
project is all wrong. She just paused it and
Mm-hmm.
pulled back, and has been rebuilding and realigning herself so that if she steps into the next, whatever she steps into next is purely for the beauty of creation, and for service, and for all the great things that we doing. Things is fun. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
my life is very full, and full of projects and all sorts of things. And I think the biggest practice for Austin and I is constantly, when things feel like they're just about to, like a wave is about to just roll us right over, we have to look at each other and remember, no matter what happens on the other side of this wave, life is beautiful. We have each other. This has been a blessing. And look at how much we've learned, and just forget about the risk or the outcomes and just go for it, you know?
Yeah. That's a beautiful way of resetting over and over and over again and coming back to the why. And I think just even the to me I feel like it's the what you're saying about letting go of the outcome, that feels like medicine for me right now, you know. um and again, I really do attribute this to even like the fear of death, that I
Of
feel
course.
like, right? It's the, when's that going to happen? How do I prepare for it? What's going to, like all the things. And realizing, and I think we hear this so much, like it's more about the journey than it is about the destination. And I have to constantly remind myself to be here, like to be in the moment, and to,
Hmm.
you know, to constantly come back to my why, like the why that even set me off on this course. It's really not about the money or anything like that. And I feel like I have been trying to, the word sustainability has been very big on my vocabulary list, wanting to create a sustainable life. And
Hmm.
that means financial sustainability, but that also
Hmm.
means energetic sustainability. And
Hmm.
so, what I've been experiencing is, a season of really abundant financial sustainability, feeling like, okay, I can do this. Like,
Nice.
like I'm bringing in enough people to be able to support
Hmm.
this business and grow this business, and then completely burning out energetically during that
Hmm.
season, and then
Hmm.
realizing, oh my gosh, financial sustainability does not equate energetic sustainability, and now I have to work
Hmm.
on energetic sustainability. So I feel like I'm on this little pendulum swinging from here to here, and it's like starting to kind of like come down to the middle,
Nice.
you know?
Yep.
But yeah, I really appreciate what you're sharing because it resonates deeply with me right now.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting because as this the work we're doing here feels the closest. I mean, it just is. It's right in the center of the bullseye of ikigai, of life's work, of, of God's
Hmm.
work, whatever you want to call it. Like, and it's very interesting that when it's, but that brings about a level of intensity that you have to be really careful of as well.
Hmm.
And continuing to, like you say, find that balance. And for us, we've it's been a few, I mean, there's much easier, if I cared, if money is what I cared about first, there's a lot easier ways to make money. I wouldn't be doing this.
Right, right, exactly.
And
Same.
I want a comfortable life, and I'm not going to martyr myself for this work either. And I
Hmm.
don't think that's a good look, because I don't think a practitioner in a wellness space can really do anything if they're not well themselves. I
Agree.
just think that the transmission you're providing is hollow. It doesn't work. It doesn't do anything in the long term. So it's been really interesting to continually find that balance. And I think part of it is continuing to step into the value that we know we are delivering, and just charge for it at a level that is sustainable. And frankly, if that's not sustainable, then we're not in alignment with the universe, and we should be doing something else. So those are the kind of things. It's like, if this doesn't work, well, it wasn't supposed to work, so that's
Right.
okay. What's the next thing? And that's been the biggest shift for me in my life, because I've been an entrepreneur a long time. But for a long time, if something went wrong or something didn't go the way I expected it to, I would I would I don't know if I would melt down, but I would put a tremendous amount of pressure in the moment to try and will the universe to go another direction. And then and so much energy gets wasted that way, as opposed to saying, okay, we were hoping that this partnership thing was going to happen, and it didn't. Okay, I wonder why it didn't happen. I wonder what we weren't paying attention to, or I wonder what else is sitting there waiting to happen that will come along. And when you switch to that orientation, not only are you letting things go much quicker,
Hmm.
but you're also you are in you have much more chance of actually noticing the moment and noticing the opportunity that's right in front of you.
Hmm.
If I'm
Hmm.
constantly thinking that something's going to happen on my left, so I'm just staring to my left the whole time, the opportunity could be at my right, but I am not looking over there, because I've already set, my goal is to have a perfect opportunity on my left.
Right.
And so
Right.
I'm going to wait, and I'm going to focus all my attention. I'm going to be really stressed out about making sure I'm ready for this opportunity that's going to come on my left, when the opportunity was sitting there on the right the whole time.
Mm.
But it's been a very interesting, that's been one of the biggest shifts in my life, which is amazing, because we are taking bigger risks than I've ever taken in my business or personal life. And um, at the same time, I've disconnected from the existential risk that my ego always felt about failure, meaning death. And failure is not death.
Mm.
We are very blessed. The fact that you and I are on this podcast with the freedom of time to talk about these topics and to be doing the work that we're doing means that we are in an absolutely blessed
Yeah.
place, to
Mm-hmm.
really, like, a very privileged place. And that any thought that anything we're doing is an existential risk is just insane. It's just completely bad programming.
Yeah.
It's just really bad code. And uh and it, I mean, it just makes sense. As a child, a lot of things are existential, and if our parents are fighting all the time, it's existential. And if, when we
Mm.
performed really well, our parents showed us love and attention, that taught us that this existential risk of being ignored or not seen, because
Mhm.
gets fixed by being a really high performer, or
Mhm.
by achieving at a high level, or whatever. Like, it's very simple psychology that then just translates into our adult life. And then we run around thinking, if I don't get 10 clients,
The
life is
world
going
is
to end.
over. Yeah.
Life is going to end. Like, and that is not true.
Yeah, I know. Well, just even hearing it out loud, it's like, okay, that's absurd, you know?
But that is literally the
Yeah,
math that's happening in our
exactly.
ego. That is literally the math. And it all comes back to the ego is trying to avoid annihilation,
Mm.
right? And
Mhm.
same reason I had this moment in a fight with Austin a few years ago. Austin and I were having a fight. I mean, we never fight because Austin and I are a perfect couple, but I'm making up this story so I can be more relatable to people. No, we were having this fight, and it was like, it was probably over nothing. Yeah, most of our fights are over, we can't really tell, but like any cosmic couple, like, you come together to find your greatest strengths and your greatest weaknesses,
Totally. Yeah.
and anyway, we'd been in a fight, and it had gone on, like, this was the second day, or maybe even third day, which is very unusual. And I remember we were sitting on the ferry coming from Bowen Island into the city, and we were sitting there in this kind of cold war of quiet, and we were both very upset because we'd been fighting and it just couldn't resolve.
Mm.
And this thought came into my mind that I feel so grateful for, that this, I don't know, like, this divine information came down, and it said, if you win this fight, what do you actually win? And
Mm. Wow.
what it meant to me is, like, if I win this fight, I could lose this relationship,
Yeah.
like, if I keep trying to win, what am I winning? Like, I'm winning over my life partner. Like, what does that
Mm.
even mean,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
in that moment, the orientation shift was, I because often I find, like, if you listen carefully when you're in a fight with somebody that you love and that loves you, you often find that the inner voice says, don't give it away, don't give it away, don't
Yeah.
give it away. Like, don't admit that you were, you've started to realize that you were kind of off in the thing you said 6 hours ago or yesterday, but there's still part of your ego that just wants it to resolve but doesn't want to actually give up. It's like, that's your ego fighting for survival.
Yeah.
And in the moment, I just thought, like, there was something in my mind going, don't give it away, don't give it away. And that's when that download came saying, what, if you win, what do you win?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
what do you lose?
Mhm.
And in that moment, I thought about it for a sec, and then I just said, this is what I'm most afraid of in this moment. This is the fear that's coming up for me.
Mhm.
And I just went to the most vulnerable place I could find in that moment. And Austin sat there for a few moments, and then she did the same. And
Mm.
then, 3 minutes later, this Cold War fight thing about nothing was just, it was gone because it was an illusion to begin with. It wasn't real in the first place. And those are the ways that the ego continually shows up fighting for its life in
Mm.
all these funny little ways, and it's all attached to this idea of death,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Part of this experience, to me, part of the 5-MeO experience, is hopefully getting a glimpse that there is no such thing. And even if it's unconscious, even if the person doesn't connect to that directly in a conscious way,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes at a very deep level that happens. And
Mm-hmm.
that starts to unravel the, oh, I'm actually just not so anxious about that talk I got to give, or I'm not so worried about that thing I got to say to my brother that's been, the elephant in the room, or
Mm-hmm.
like suddenly the things of your life are not so weighted or loaded because there's like a disconnect from the idea that they're going to kill you.
Yeah. I'm curious from your perspective, what is the connection between ego death? Um, I've had it explained to me that ego death and ego disillusionment is two different things,
Hmm.
which I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. But also, the part two to this is, what is the connection between ego death and having a mystical experience?
Huh. Interesting. Well, I'm curious first about ego death and ego dissolution and the difference between the two.
The person who actually had on my podcast, they were describing that ego disillusionment was just kind of like the quieting down almost of the default mode network, but not a full
Sure.
on death, like not a full letting go, but just, sort of a little bit of a more like maybe the tensions released a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, versus a full ego death. So I was interested. I
I
hadn't
see.
heard that before, but yeah.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense that there's a scale or a spectrum of ego relaxing into complete disillusion. The fact is that at the peak of a pure ego death, there is no you there. There is no experience. There's no you there to remember anything or see
Mm,
anything.
mm,
You become the experience. That's pure non-duality,
mm,
which, so at that peak moment, there's nobody there. You've taken off the personality suit entirely in order to step into all of life. And then you slowly come back into the personality, and the personality starts noticing that you're having an experience, and
mm, mm,
that, oh shit, like, it can be a very disorienting time the first time or the 10th time sometimes. Like, oh, there's a me here, and oh, where am, like, who are these people? Oh, there's Stephen Austin. And oh, like putting the pieces back together, and hopefully being able to continually let that mind that's trying to figure everything out relax, so that you can stay tethered to this experience you're coming back from, and soak it in, like, and the best way to soak it in is by feeling it, because the mind it's too big for the mind to comprehend anyway. That's
mm,
why I think of most psychedelics actually as quite effable.
mm,
You can get to a point where it's pretty ineffable or very difficult to describe because we don't have good language for that, for what we see or experience. But at the peak of 5-MeO, it's ineffable. It's way beyond any construct. And so you're just kind of hopefully going to feel that in every cell of the body, and allow that openness to be felt in the heart and in the muscles and in every facet of your being.
mm.
um and that to me is like, I forget the question, so now I'm just talking about ego death.
I'm curious the connection between. I know this is a really actually great explanation, and you're
And
actually hitting it. But the connection between ego death
a
and
mystical experience.
a mystical
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
Well, I think to wait that the other guests you're speaking about, in terms of them, saying that, you can have ego disillusion, or you can relax the default mode network, all in there is the chance for mystical experiences. And you can have mystical experiences in your waking, conscious, sober life as well, when you're just so struck by the sound of a orchestra, or you know seeing a mountain and the sun just pops out and the clouds clear. And it's just so awe-inspiring. Like when you get connected to life, these moments of interconnectedness happen all the time, where time falls away
Mm.
and
Mhm.
there's no thought, there's just a swell of um emotion, might be the wrong word, but just energy in the body often. So Austin is such a master of presence that she has these all the time where she just starts crying, and she's not sad and she's not anything. She's just she's so in touch with the moment that the energy of the moment is flowing through her body, and her body, it's like dropping a rock in the pond, and the pond is going to ripple.
Mhm. Mhm.
When we are in connection with ourselves in the moment, that's what we feel. We feel the effervescence of that moment. And that to me is what a mystical experience is. And there's lots of different types of mystical experience, but that to me is it. It's just feeling one with the moment, oneness
Mm.
with the moment.
And so in that oneness of the moment, there is kind of a dissolving of self, I think,
Yes.
in there, right? Like you
Yes.
just suddenly become almost unaware of what you are. You're just aware of the connection,
Yeah.
that felt experience of
That's
whatever
right.
you are in.
And
Yeah.
I used to play a lot of I used to, well, I mean, I still make a lot of music, but I used to play in bands and do a lot of improvisation. And when I played with excellent players and we really were in locked into each other, we would constantly have these moments where time disappeared and we would sort of come out of the trance.
Mm.
And we might have been smoking a bit of pot or something, but like, well, we weren't. It wasn't the drugs. It was the fact that like I have this one very particular moment, but I'm blessed enough to have an incredible amount of these moments. But one that comes to mind was the three of us were just in a basement of a house playing music. There's nobody there. It's just the three of us. We're improvising, and I saw the three of us become this like kind of image, this triangular, this kind of geometry, we were playing three different rhythms that clicked into a fourth rhythm,
Wow.
and it transcended what we were doing. And we just like it's almost like our souls just like rose above us into the center of the circle, the center of the room. And then we came back, and none of us really remembered what we were playing. We couldn't recreate it. It just happened.
Yeah.
And I really look at my creative background and my music career and all the improvisation I did as a huge part of the training for what we do now, because so much of what we're doing is being absolutely present, totally intuitive with the person we're working with. And the ceremonies are so dynamic and so unpredictable that
Mm.
you just roll with it, and you naturally feel into it. And Austin is a master of that too. And we're just in a dance. And it's such a beautiful expression. The amount of times we have mystical experiences witnessing other people on drugs is phenomenal.
Wow. What you're describing, I feel like I only had a hint of back when I was playing classical music and in a trio, and it
Mm,
was it was classical. It was an improvisation, but there was definitely a moment where I felt like I was no longer looking at the music or looking at the actual notes or the music itself. I was just locked in with the
yeah,
players and having just a very transcendent kind of moment of, it's almost like my cello was playing itself in a sense.
that's right.
Yeah, and your share just reminded me. I haven't thought about that moment in ages, but
Yeah,
it's if you ever watch Soul, I feel like it's like that
I
that
love
mo
that movie.
it's so good. But
It's
yeah,
such a beautiful movie. It's really actually very deep.
it's very, very deep. I watch it regularly just to kind
Nice.
of connect back to because yeah, I feel like they did such a beautiful job visualizing
Yeah,
that experience
they
of
did.
being in flow or being, in that space of
Mm,
connectivity to all that is.
mm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one more thing. Just I guess, I think a lot of what people talk about as the mystical experience of 5-MeO is the white light oneness.
Mm-hmm.
And I and so that's kind of, you in some ways you hope that everybody has that, but that to me is just the most clear version of a mystical experience where it's like the center of the bullseye of mystical experiences, where there is no story, there is no visual, there is no you, there is just oneness and pure energy and everything all at once. Like it's really shown me that all of time is completely illusory. In fact, everything has already happened and is happening in one moment, the past and the future, and all of that is one thing. It's and but you have these glimpses when you're playing music, when you are in a, like a lot of people have that playing sports, flow states, right? Or when you're in this perfect state of flow where creation is coming through you effortlessly without your mind having to, you're not controlling anything. You're just, it's like your body, like you said, playing the cello, and the notes are just arriving, and it's just pouring through you. Like you've become a pure conduit with the universe in that moment. That to me is what a mystical experience is as well.
I think in that second journey up, what I was trying to describe to people coming back was that
Mm-hmm.
this white space that you're talking about, it felt almost it like the it's like the presence and absence of everything. It's like
Yep.
everything's there and also nothing is there,
Yep.
and very much like the color white, like all the colors of the spectrum are present, and yet there's almost kind of like an absence of every color because all you're seeing the amalgamation of all of it
Mm-hmm.
together.
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, just the falling away. And I think I shared this with you in our integration right after the journey, but it's interesting what brought me to Enfold and to you in Austin, because it really came from a dream that I had
Right.
the previous November, in which I knew I was sitting with 5-MeO DMT, and I was taken to this white room that was edgeless, kind of like the Matrix. There's like just no
Mm-hmm.
edges. You're just in this white room, and then returning and telling the people that I was there with about this white room. And I think I shared with you that after my experience at Enfold, like, yes, I know I was referring to the medicine, but I
Mm-hmm.
really, really now believe it was actually some divine guidance to you in Austin and to
Wow.
Enfold and what you guys have created together, and being in your beautiful home and the meditation room that is beautiful and white and open, and the sun coming through. The sun was a big player, I think, that week
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that I was there with you guys. And yeah, just experiencing all of it together. You have created and you continue to create a really incredible, very living, breathing experience,
Wow.
and I cannot wait to come back again. I know I'm going to be back. It's a matter of
Wow.
when, but I know I'm going to definitely be back. Um, and so, for anybody who's listening, if you're at all curious about 5-MeO DMT, I cannot recommend Enfold enough. It's just, yeah, you guys hold a very special place in my heart now, and I'm just forever grateful.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ellen. That really means a lot coming from you, and just knowing how deeply you work in this space as well. And it just, to hear that reflection, it's really beautiful. What comes to mind too is that everything that we're doing is guided by our experience with five, and in trying to hold this medicine with as much integrity and clarity as possible, and almost trying to create the experience that the medicine offers, the knowledge and the knowing that the medicine offers in all the other aspects of the experience as well. And to but it's all informed by 5-MeO. The breath work that we do was the first thing I used to do a lot of producing and recording and things like that, but that breath work we did is the first thing I really got software again, relearned how to use it, and made that piece, which is a 27-minute piece
Cool.
of music that was purely informed. It just flowed straight through me from my 5-MeO experiences. And so much of this is just continuing to channel what this medicine has taught us, and hoping that others get to have the depth of experience that we've had with, give people the best possible chance of touching that love and experiencing that love. And if they do touch it, then to actually contextualize it, make sense of it, and figure out what to do with that,
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. A huge part of what we talk about, Austin and I, as part of what we're doing here, is also in some ways working to be invisible as we facilitate as well. And again, it's hard to describe what I'm trying to say, I guess, but just the whole experience, it's just coming through us. It's it just happens to be here when we're here. I don't know. And so it's a blessing to be able to do this work. It's really remarkable.
Well, I think it really speaks to obviously the love that both of you share together, the
Mm-hmm.
love that you've put into the home. And what comes to mind is that you've created a spotless container.
Mm.
It's that edgeless white room that I'm talking about, the invisibility that you're speaking of. It's such a loving container for whatever needs to happen within,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I think it's really a testament to both of you doing your own work and
Yeah,
still doing your work, as
totally.
you're holding others in this work too.
Yeah, the love that we have for each other and the work that we do to stay connected to that love is the absolute, it's the heart of this experience. In fact, we have a very clear rule that if this project ever starts to be too much and it starts to like affect or impact our relationship, or put our relationship at risk, then it all ends, because it can't exist if we're not in a really good place. And so we've always, that's our rule. We're always coming back to that and reminding ourselves that we have to be good first so that everything else can flow the way it does. Yeah.
Yeah, it's felt. It's very much felt, and it shows too.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for being here and just sharing your
My
wisdom so
pleasure.
generously. Thank you all so much for receiving this conversation with Steve Rio. I cannot recommend Enfold Institute enough. If you feel at all called to sit with 5-MeO DMT and be nurtured in a very protective and safe and loving environment, Steve and Austin have created just the most beautiful and thoughtful environment for this experience. And I just love them so much, and I know that my future experiences with this medicine will be at Enfold. They've now extended their medicine retreat to a 6-day offering rather than the 4 that I attended. And so it gives you an opportunity to sit with more medicine and for a longer duration of time so that you can actually take your time, and not feel rushed. It just kind of stretches out the ability to be in their energy and be held in that space. So I, again, just cannot recommend them enough. And I also want to say a special shout out to Lana Pribic, who is the host of Modern Psychedelics podcast. She is my next guest in the next episode, and she's actually the reason why I ended up at Enfold, because of her episode about her own experience. So I'm excited to bring you that conversation as well, where you can hear a little bit more about Lana's own medicine journey. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you at the next episode.